The Marlins get back in the win column and they can take the series from the New York Mets with a win on Wednesday. Can they continue this hot start to the season? And is there concern to be had with Sandy Alcantara?
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. You can hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and let me know your thoughts, as always, in the comments section. And on today's show, I am joined by Presley Walker. Presley, welcome in. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. It's been a little bit. We used to podcast more frequently when the Marlins roster looked a lot different than it did now. But good to have you on. Yeah. But, the Marlins have a hot start to this season. They win last night against the New York Mets 4-2. Sandy got the start. We're going to talk more about him later on in the show. But there's some positives to take away from last night's game. In particular, I think Kyle Stowers with a 421-foot home run. He's now hitting over 300 to start the season. Graham Pauley looked really good. His swing is really impressive to me from the left-handed side. But just digging right into it, they can win the series and have back-to-back series wins to start the season if they win today on Wednesday. What do they have to do, in your opinion, to continue this hot start to the season moving forward?
I mean, I think it's obviously pitching. It all comes down to pitching, which, I mean, thankfully, as a Marlins fan, that's really all we got, all we've had for however long. But, I think the only way they can continue doing this is starting pitching does its job, relievers do their job, because we know this team, I mean, they have, but have they scored over 5 runs yet?
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, like 5 runs is obviously the dead point. I couldn't remember. In the first game, did they lose 10-4? Was it 10-4 or 10-5?
It was 10-4. Yeah, they tacked on a couple runs in garbage
it was
time. Yeah,
10-1 at some point. So, like,
right.
if they cross the 5 run, if they give up 5 runs, the game the game is essentially over. So the only way they're going to be able to continue doing what they're doing is if their pitching continues to allow 3 or less. I mean, that's really, unfortunately, it's how it's been for years. And 23 was very similar. They won a few games because of, Soler and Arias being able to do what they were doing that year. But, like, they're not obviously the best lineup in baseball. It's fun to watch right now, but sometimes you got to remember it's 162 games. And 162 games, your pitching is going to have bad stretches. Your offense is going to get hot. Like, we're probably going to see a few games. I hope we see a few games this year where they put up 10 or more. It'd be cool. I think it'd be cool in general to see them win, 65 plus. I have very low standards for this team. So,
yeah, I think the bullpen, what you mentioned, the bullpen and pitching, the pitching staff as a whole, they've been really good to start the season, and it's extremely volatile when it comes to the pitching staff, and especially with the Marlins, because you see so many transactions. You've seen guys get hurt, and you're going to see guys come back. Ryan Weathers, hopefully. Edward Cabrera made his first rehab appearance last night for AAA Jacksonville, so he's on his way back. But the bullpen, what I've noticed, and this is just from the first week of observations, they are relied upon in the complete sense that the game falls on their shoulders, because the starters, I talked about this in yesterday's show, they're not providing the length that you want to see. And even Sandy Alcantara, who got pulled after 70 pitches, it now you have to cover 4 innings with a 2-run lead at the time. So that lead can quickly disappear. And I could have easily seen a scenario where the Marlins lost that game. They get it done. The bullpen looked really good. Ronnie Enriquez gave you 2 really good innings in the 6th and 7th. And then Lake Bacher gives you a perfect 8th. And then the 9th inning is when the drama starts unfolding because you don't have that set closer. And entering the season, I thought it was going to be Calvin Fauché. I really liked what I saw from him last year. I liked his stuff. I thought, you have that high 90s fastball, that cut fastball, the breaking ball. This guy's going to walk in and just assume the closer's role. And it's been the complete opposite. Instead, in that save situation, you have Anthony Veneziano getting his first opportunity to get that save, his first save of his career. He gets into trouble. So Clayton McCullough goes out, pulls him, puts in Bender, and Bender kind of mops up the mess, and you get out of there with a dub. But do you have any thoughts, Presley, on the closer situation for the Marlins? Is there someone in particular that you would rather see, or is it just going to be a closer by committee and it's all hands on deck when it comes to closing out ball games?
So the realistic option is the option that you just mentioned. Bender has the most experience, not only like as a closer in the league. Like they have a young bullpen. They have a totally young pitching staff.
Yeah.
So I mean, he has the most experience. He would be the most obvious. He did it. Was that 22 that he did it before he got hurt? At the beginning of the season, was pretty locked down that year, and then it hasn't really been the same since. So like, you got to prove it. Like he's got to earn that role, but he seems like the most obvious option. I mean, we've been talking about it for 4 years, and I don't think it'll ever happen. But the person I'd like to see there is Cabrera. I think Edward Cabrera being a closer, not only like you get to watch that production from him and keep him on the field. Injury riddled career, but being realistic, trade deadline, teams are going to need relief pitching, and you're going to get a lot for him if he does perform in that role. I feel like it's low risk, high reward situation for the Marlins if they were to move Cabrera to the bullpen.
Well, they certainly are running out of time to decide what to do with him. I've advocated for making that move. At least just give him an opportunity to pitch out of the bullpen, because I don't think he can be relied on as a starter. Now, for what it's worth, in his rehab assignment, he didn't walk anybody in 3 innings, but that's not the major
He's done this
leagues.
before.
Yeah,
He's done this before.
Us. He teases us.
And then he'll come up and he'll do like 3 straight starts of the same thing. And you're like, oh my God, he's finally figured it out. And then all of a sudden the next game, he'll walk the first 4 hitters of the game.
It's the same story
right
every time.
Exactly. So it's like at some point, handing it off, say, this isn't working. Let's try something that might work and might, get us 2 top 100 prospects in return come August.
Yeah, I think that the bullpen is, if the Marlins don't continue playing well and they kind of revert back to the mean, and we're sitting here in July and they're 20 games under, 15 games under 500, and they're obviously sellers, then that bullpen will be a hot commodity because there's a lot of pieces out there where teams are going to be interested. You're always going to need bullpen arms. So like you said with Bender, if Bender does establish himself as a high leverage arm out of the pen that's going to get save opportunities and Clayton McCullough trusts him, then he could be a trade candidate moving forward. I do think with this tough schedule coming up, it does go back to the starting pitching. If they want to continue playing well, you have to see better outings from Cal Quantrill. You have to see more from Connor Gillespie, who pitches today. And then that third spot, they have an off day Thursday, which would have been Valente Beozo's role. I mean, he was optioned. Do you just go back to Max Meyer on Friday? They don't really have a set rotation because it's going to be flexible. Guys will come back up. Guys will be sent down. But Sandy Alcantara, let's talk about him coming up in the next segment. He is the ace of the pitching staff. I want to see more from him. He earned the win yesterday, but he only pitched through 5 innings. He only pitched 70 pitches. Pitch count was the lowest it's been in years. So we're going to talk about if there is any potential concern for him moving forward. That's coming up right after this. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. If you love the no-shells variety, it's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether you're snacking at your desk, you're on a road trip, or you just need a quick protein boost, they're always a go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein. It provides all 9 essential amino acids, and these little green wonders pack a protein punch. So, grab the no-shells Wonderful Pistachios if you like that grab-and-go ease, or if you like the satisfying crack of opening every shell, like snack meditation, the in-shell varieties are a classic choice. Whether you're running between the meetings or you're dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get cracking and get snacking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here with Presley Walker. Thank you guys for listening. If this is your first time, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and join the Locked On Marlins community. And for all the everyday listeners, I appreciate you. Presley, we're talking about Sandy Alcantara. Do you have any concerns with him? Because that was not vintage Sandy last night.
I'm not really even sure if it's a concern. I kind of have a hot take that people are not gonna like, but yeah, I don't know if Sandy really is what we thought he was. You know what I mean? Not only is he coming off of injury, but like he has 1 year where it's like this guy was on top of the mountain. I'm not saying Sandy's bad by any means. I'm saying like talking about a guy that like realistically, if we're speaking, probably a 2 or a 3, like on most teams, not just like in Miami, like on most teams, like a good solid starting pitcher. But outside of his Cy Young season, he's never been like a 2.8 guy. Like he's always been in the mid to high threes. Even the year they made the playoffs, they did that despite what Sandy was doing. He had a very poor year that year. I don't know. I'm just starting to doubt maybe Sandy was ever really, like he had that, like I said, that 1 good year, but I'm not sure if he really is what we thought he was, unfortunately.
Could it be like that that scenario where Marlins fans are so isolated sometimes from the rest of the baseball world that we gravitate toward anybody that has star potential? A lot of Marlins fans, including myself, are huge Jazz fans. Now
I'm a Jazz fan guy.
The numbers don't necessarily say Jazz is a superstar. I'm going to say Jazz is a very good player and can be a star, but he hasn't had that one breakout season. He's shown flashes of it, but that's a point with Sandy Alcantara that, when it comes to trade offers, because the trade rumors will surround him for the rest of the year, I've always maintained that Sandy Alcantara should not be traded unless it's a clear overpay, given the contract situation that the Marlins have. You have him for 2 more years, and if you want, you have him for a 3rd year because you have a club option. But that's a very hot take because Sandy is beloved here, among Marlins fans, and he had that Cy Young season, which he was so dominant, and he's such a throwback pitcher where on any given day, you see him go 8 innings. You can see him pitch a complete game. But I will say that I don't think you're going to see Sandy pitch a complete game. I don't think the organization is going to let him. He said he was tired. He's not able to recuperate as fast or as quickly as he did before the Tommy John surgery. So I'm not concerned necessarily that he's hurt. I think it's just lingering effects of being out of baseball for so long and the workload that he's used to. And given the trade rumors that is surrounding him, I don't think the organization is going to let him pitch into the 8th inning or the 9th inning or run up a pitch count north of 110. It's just hard to envision that, especially after an outing in which he only threw it 70 times, you know?
So two things. I'll start with the Jazz take. Um, so the thing about Jazz that a lot of players, not just Sandy, has is he has the superstar attitude.
He does.
So like you're looking at two completely different personalities. Like I think production wise, they're really not that far apart. Outside of the fact
I think
that
Sandy's done more.
I'm gonna say that Jazz's lows have not been as low as Sandy's has. Sandy has 6 seasons and one really, really, really high, and the rest are just kind of like okay, average to low. Jazz, outside of not being able to stay on the field, was like he was an all star the year that in 20 was that 22? Or was that 23?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, I mean he was an all star in 22. When he was on the field in 23, you saw him help lift the Marlins to the playoffs for the first time in, you know, 20 years. Real playoffs, not 2020. But I think that Sandy will get back to like his 8 to 9 inning thing. You know, like people see Tommy John all the time and think it's not that big of a deal. Tommy John is still a big deal. It's
Yeah,
not
it's a
like
huge
career
deal.
ending. It's not as career ending as it once was. It still ends career though. Like it's not uncommon for it to see it in people's careers. I just think people associate it with not being a big deal. It's just missing time, but it's not that way. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll get back and he'll probably have his. I'm hopeful for a mid to low 3 ERA. I just think like when it comes to the trade talks, and I said this. I mean, I've been pretty pessimistic since the Arias trade. You know, a year ago. We're about exactly a year from when it happened, and I went on a tangent and I said trade everybody at that moment, including
Yeah.
Sandy. I just feel like you've missed your opportunity at this point to trade Sandy, and I feel like at this point you just ride it out with the guy. I mean, he's good. He's like I don't want people to think I'm coming on here and saying he's crap. I just don't know if he will ever return to, or if he ever truly was that ace, you know, a top 3 pitcher in the league, a Corbin Burns, or you know what we expect Paul Skeens to be. Um,
Well, 2023 was rough, you know, and I think that was due in part due to his injury. Like I don't know what was going behind the scenes, but something was, because he wasn't himself. He wasn't finishing hitters or closing out innings. Oftentimes it would be one inning that would get him into trouble. But it is a hot take what you're saying, because if you look at the numbers now, remember he's playing in a market and for a team that for most of his career has been irrelevant, you
for
know.
sure.
But 2019, it was his first year, full season as a Marlin. 32 starts, 3.88 ERA. 2020 is the COVID year. I kind of throw that out. He still pitched well. 7 starts, even 3 ERA. And then 21, he lost 15 games, but no run
That
support, 33
losses
starts.
losses are
Yeah,
irrelevant.
right.
I'm
But to the casual fan, they would look at that. Oh, Sandy went 9-15, you know. But he pitched really well. 3.19 ERA, over 200 innings, over 200 strikeouts. I think that was the year that you saw Sandy really come into his own as an ace pitcher. And then you had the 2022 season where it all came together. He was an 8-WAR guy. And I got to disagree with you on the sense that I think Sandy can be an ace and is an ace when he's healthy. We saw 2023, and I think that's more of the outlier than what Sandy is. But I do think that this season, I was expecting Sandy to just come out right off the gate, guns a-blazing, 7, 8 innings. And I think I jumped ahead of the gun right there, because that's so clear and obvious that's not the organization's plan. I think they're trying to protect him, and I don't think everything is at 100% for him in terms of stamina-wise. I mean, he
I
said it
also don't
himself,
think
he's just tired.
I also don't think he's like they're holding him back for trade purposes. Like you know, the rumors were swirling preseason. I think it legitimately is just coming back from an injury. And like I said though, it's like I see him as a 2 or a 3. Do you not think if Yuri was healthy and producing at a rate that we thought he would be, you think he would be a better pitcher than Sandy is at this very current state?
Well, the talent from Yuri is undeniable, but the track record that Sandy has, I think I would lean towards Sandy because Yuri's only pitched, half of a season or 21 games, a little over half. It wasn't a complete season. We've seen multiple years from Sandy. So Sandy would be the ace, but Yuri is also coming back from Tommy John now. So there's no reason to rush him.
A little younger though.
He is younger. But Sandy's not old. He's not necessarily.
No, for sure not old. No. He's still like what is he? Is he 28?
I think he's 28. 28 or 29. Let me see here.
I mean,
he's definitely not a spring chicken, but he's
he's 29. We just saw Corbin Burns, who's 32
right,
or 31. Get a $240 million deal. So like, it's not. He's at a good age for what could be considered an ace.
Do you think they trade him this season?
This season, no.
You don't think they do?
I think if they move off of him, it will be this offseason.
See, I think that the Marlins could trade him. I mean, I was sold before the season that it was going to just happen. Like I fully expected, if you asked me before the year, 99%, yeah, I'm sure they're going to trade him. And I still lean towards that way if they fall out of contention, just because each game that goes by, you're getting less and less value. Like you said, you could have traded, and I felt like they want him to prove his health. And for an outside perspective, a guy coming back from Tommy John surgery, only 70 pitches. He says he's feeling tired. Maybe there's some lingering effects. Obviously, you don't want to trade him right now, but I still think they trade him at the deadline if they fall out of contention.
I would almost think it would be smarter to trade him. I mean, so a lot of the time, trade deadline packages are going to be bigger and a little more exaggerated because teams are trying to make that push.
Right.
But when you're talking about a guy with 2+ years of of contract remaining, there's a certain extent where it's 2+ years and it's 2 years, and 2 years and 2+ years are the same thing. Like,
yeah, they're
going to value that the same way. You know what I mean? And I would almost rather people see him complete the season, stay off the IL, or as much as he can. Like there's going to be times where he's day-to-day or whatever, might push a start back. But like, I think people would rather see him finish the season and maybe finish with that 3.5 or 3.6, and then they're like, well, now we're not relying on him for a playoff push, so here's what we're bringing to you, rather than we're not going to give you the whole thing because we can't rely on this guy for a playoff push.
Man, I think they can. I think any team would be lucky to have Sandy when he's healthy and pitching well.
That's the thing. I meant from like an injury aspect.
Oh, right.
Right. Yeah. Like if they don't see him complete the season, there's almost that like, well, he's coming off Tommy John, like,
yeah,
this is all we can bring you because he's coming off Tommy John. Well, if he has a year under his belt, they're like, well, we could bring you a little more because he's thrown that full season. He's thrown that 170, 165 inning pitch season, and now we're gonna ride this guy all the way.
Last thing I'll say before we hit the ad and the next segment is that we've seen how Peter Bendix approaches trades, and the easy comparison was Jesus Luzardo. He traded Jesus Luzardo coming off a season which he started 13 games, and was injured, and it didn't matter. He traded him in the offseason. So I don't think on the Marlins side they're going to necessarily like wait to be like, oh, he's healthy, he's ready to go, look what we have. I could see him being traded a lot earlier than that, but we'll see what happens. Coming up next, let's talk about the torpedo bats that are seemingly taking over all of baseball. Give our opinions on those. That's coming up right after this. Do you ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment like Marlins baseball, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Back here on Locked On Marlins, a reminder, hit me up with any comments or questions. I'll do my best to answer them during the Friday mailbag episode. Presley, what do you think about the torpedo bats that are just taking MLB by storm right now? Is it blown out of proportion, or is this a legit?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it's that big a deal.
You know the guy who invented it works for the Marlins, right?
Yeah.
So
He's a former
I heard
MIT grad.
So the thing is I heard this take on another podcast, and it's not a Marlins podcast. It's not it's a specific team podcast, but I'm not gonna no free shout outs kind of thing. And they said the guy who invented this works for the Marlins, and they can't hit for anything. So why do we think that this actually works? And I was kind of like, yeah, you're not wrong. I was already like, this is stupid. They hit however many home runs against Nestor Cortez. Whoa, But I don't think it's a real thing, though. It could be a mental thing for sure. 100% could be a mental thing.
Yeah,
like you could have your mental, but
well,
I think the physical aspect of it.
When you're in the gym, like I'll go to the gym and I get so OCD about it. I'm like, all right, I got to bench press. So I got to make sure I drink this Red Bull before, because if I don't drink my Red Bull, I'm not gonna hit my PR. It might be something like that. I think overall the science behind it, we're not going to get into the science because I'm not an MIT grad. From what I've heard, though, it's sacrificing a little bit of extra or exit velocity for a little bit more plate coverage and all this. But what I heard is Aaron Judge, who literally hit 62 home runs a couple years ago, he's not using it. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. Like,
yeah, that was the best example too. He hit 3 home runs in one game. Oh my god, he's Aaron Judge, dude. Like, relax.
And
he's still one of the best power bats in the game, no matter what bat he's using.
Right. I mean, it comes down to the player. Like, you're not going to give this bat to Matt Mervis and he's suddenly going to tap into all his potential and become Aaron Judge. Sorry for the shade to Matt Mervis, but it is what it is.
Well, that's what they were saying was Volpe was the one they were using, and I'm like, could y'all just have y'all thought about the fact that maybe he's a year older, he hasn't 162 games under his belt, and maybe he's developing as a player like y'all thought he would, but I don't know. It's definitely the bat.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like when you're playing like as a kid in Little League or high school, and you see that one kid who has like the DeMarini,
the Mako,
brand new bat, the Mako, yeah, dude. And then you're like, dude, can I use your bat? And then you take it and you ground out to short. You're like, oh, well, I wasted it. It's like, because maybe it's not all the bat, I just think like it's a cool storyline, I guess, but people take these storylines and just run with it, and it's just blown out of proportion because I really don't think it's that big a deal.
Yeah, it's early season stuff. We don't playoffs yet. People forget that it's 162 games, and
it's going to be
the first weekend's super exciting, but like, what else do we really have to talk about? Like the wins at this very second doesn't matter. I mean, like the Marlins are 4-2. So like, yeah, I think that's really all it is. It's just something to talk about here in March or April now.
Going back what we talked about earlier in the show, we mentioned Jazz Chisholm, former Marlin, a little bit. He is the player I would pick 100 times out of 100 that would be the first to raise his hand and say, "Oh, I want to use that bat," because he loves like the trendy stuff. He wants to be the storyline. I don't
Yeah,
blame
for
him. I
sure.
just think it's funny. It's like he's on Twitter and he's talking about, "Oh, I'm hitting it on the barrel and all this," and it's Jazz. Like, what do you expect? Classic
I watched
Jazz.
you hit it off the barrel with a normal bat for 3 years or 4 years, but like I don't think the bat's changing anything. But
Right, man. It's interesting. I think it's definitely above my pay grade when it comes to designing bats. I did not expect that to see. I'm looking at that and I'm like, the Yankees, like, what kind of bat is this? It looks like a cricket bat, but overall, yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal.
I did want to
Um,
mention that Stowers and Lopez have both been very impressive this year, and I would really like Stowers is one of those guys that's been hyped up top of top of the Orioles prospect list for many years. So I like to see Stowers continue that and be a middle of the order bat at some point. Like a 5, 6, 7
yeah,
hitter for the Marlins down the road. Um, which Bendix has not brought a lot of guys in that I've been like, I really hope to see this guy on the team when the rebuild's done for the 7th time. So, but Stowers and Lopez have both been very impressive this year.
100%. Sowers, like his approach that we saw in spring training, I think is carried on to the regular season because he'll draw walks. Yeah, there's still some swing and miss, but he's hitting a lot better. He's making contact and the power's so evident. I really want to see him continue this because when he made the opening day roster, I was like, all right, I'm fine with it, but here's your opportunity. You have to
Well,
make the most of it or they're going to move on.
not only that, his defense is
It's
arguably
been
the
really
best in the
good.
outfield. Yeah,
Him and
like
Jonah.
it's. I'm not sure. At some point you're gonna have to put the Jesus Sanchez experiment down if it ain't working. And if those two keep playing like that, Jesus Sanchez could be a bat you ship off for a reliever of the future, kind of like what they had done with Tanner Scott when Scott wasn't the god before he came over here.
No,
Like
no, not at all.
he definitely proved himself here, and they got good prospects in return for him. Those are two other guys that I'm very excited to see make their way up. Hopefully, probably within the next couple of months.
The prospects that we got from Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Pauley's already up and he's swinging pretty well to start the season. So I've
De
always
Los
been
Santos was in that trade, right? Am I wrong about that?
that was
Or
for
is he?
AJ. That was for AJ Puck.
Oh, that was for Puck. Okay, well,
Yeah,
he's the one that I'm like most excited to see come up and do something. But
it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of like prospects to watch for in the minors, and then the young guys on the major league team. I mean, you have Stowers. Otto Lopez has been great. I've completely flipped my stance on him in terms of
same,
the future.
very
Like
much same.
I did not think he was going to be here in the long term, and now I'm at the point where I don't see how he can't be here or won't be here for the long term. I mean, he's a good baseball player.
I think they treat him a lot like how they should be treating Dane Myers for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know why they were like, this guy's the one. And last year he wasn't. He played, I guess he was there, but he definitely grown up a little bit over the offseason. He's one of those guys, and I'd like to see Myers get more at bats and
I do too. I think he should
actually
be playing
play the
every day.
game. I don't really understand why he's not. What are you losing? What are you missing out on? Like, are you worried you're going to do what you did with Brian Anderson to him? Because I always thought Anderson was going to be something he never quite grew into. But speaking of which, I guess you could go sign Brian Anderson again if you really wanted to.
I don't even know where he is right now. Is he even an
Nowhere.
affiliated ball? No.
Nope. He is a free agent, which is insane to me.
The
That is
fall
I
off
have
needs
bought
to be studied.
I have bought 2 jerseys in my entire life, and okay, that's not true. I've bought like 6 Jose Fernandez jerseys, but I do have one singular Brian Anderson jersey for some reason. I was always really big on Brian Anderson, and he just did not pan out like I hoped he had.
Last thing before we get out of here, is your Brian Anderson jersey the old uniform or is it the
It's
new
blue.
the
It's
Marlins?
it's I mean, it was obviously before they started using them in season, but it's a blue the blue spring training one that they were
I
using for
love
so.
I love those uniforms. Those are my
I
favorite. When they debuted them, I'm like, oh, thank you. Like they're my
I
favorite to
think I
watch on
like
the
the
field.
black ones now that they fixed them.
Oh yeah, they did make a tweak to it last year.
Yeah, without where the lettering wasn't black anymore and it wasn't just a red
Yeah.
outline. I think it's full
Yeah.
blue now, or is it white? It
It's
might be
white.
white.
It's full white.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
but you can actually
no.
read who's up to the plate. So
Yeah. You're like, who is that? And you're like squinting at the TV. But Presley, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show. It's always great to talk Marlins baseball with you.
appreciate it, man. Congrats on what you got going on over here, man. You're doing great.
I appreciate that. And with that, guys, as always, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.